I actually interpreted in a somewhat idiosyncratic way because I used all jazz musicians playing. When I came down from Cambridge, I started working in a cabaret club, and we built up a little team of people that I would use on the Julie Felix show, the Bobby Gentry TV show, or the In Concert with Stan Dorfman, that I knew I could rely on, but at the same time that would give me something a bit more than the regular session musicians. The session musicians at the time were great musicians, but sometimes they were a little bit stilted in the way they played. These guys kind of gave me something a little bit extra, even though I had to work slightly harder to get there, because they weren't in the studio all the time like the regular session guys. They took a little longer to learn the part, but once they had, they would add and add and add. My flute player was Harold McNair. He'd done a lot of stuff with Donovan. He did the arrangement on Once There Was a Mountain. He also played the kind of Rowan Kirk type flute on our version of Whole Lotta Love that was CCS, the theme tune for Top the Pops for God knows how long. I used people like Ronnie Ross and Danny Moss on clarinets and bass clarinets because I found that the tone that they got as jazz musicians was different from the tone a classical musician would get. But at the same time, they were all good readers. We used Tony Carr and Terry Cox on percussion and drums and that sort of thing. Danny Thompson on bass. Danny had been working with me on a whole mess of stuff. I got Harold McNair to buy an alto flute for the sessions. He'd always just played alto and tenor saxophone and flute. Great flute. I mean, one of the finest jazz flute players that I've ever heard. But I wanted a different sound for it, and I persuaded him to buy the alto flute. And there was a fragility there in the way he played, where he's flying at the behest of the boy, and the boy is learning to fly the kestrel. And so that fragility and Harold's playing, with the jazz sensibility of it not being exactly what's on the page, I think adds enormously to the relationship. There were people who had an appreciation of the music, but could actually add something that was more than the music. So add in very small string section. I actually had a string section that rode from one session to another on motorbikes because you couldn't park. So they strapped the Strad or the Guanari on the back. They got on the bike, so they parked up. They'd do a session at Olympic in the morning, Lansdowne in the afternoon, and Kingsway in the evening. And we were doing this all the time. So there was an imperative to work fast, and a kind of optimism that what you wrote was going to be right. He was greatly helped by the film. Films are difficult when they're not well put together, or there's a sort of emotional hole in the middle of them that you know you've got to try and fill. When something is well shot, like Kes, they're not difficult to score.